Hello again. Today we're going to be talking about my June wrap up. It's the first one that I've done since I started this channel because I always left the others too late to do, and by the time I realised I hadn't done one it was like the middle of the month, so I didn't see the point in actually getting one done. For this wrap up I had to go onto Goodreads to see what I'd read because I'd basically forgotten everything that I'd read. Last month's been a very long month, and all the books that I read at the beginning of June, I thought I'd read them at the end of May. So until about half an hour ago when I checked, I thought I'd only read 3 books this month, and it turns out I'd read 11. So there's that. Out of the 11 books that I've read, 7 of them were audio, 2 were physical and 2 were ebooks. I think that's probably why I forgot that I'd read so many, is because so many were audiobooks. I tend to read more physical and ebooks than audiobooks, but for some reason this month I've listened to a lot more audiobooks than anything else. I picked up a book, I think it was last Sunday or Monday, and I thought that was the first physical book I'd read all month. I'd totally forgotten about the George Orwell one I started at the beginning of the month. So yeah, this month's just felt very, very long. I've not been feeling too great this month either, so I don't think that's helped, like mental health wise. So yeah, I think that's why I've kind of got a bit of a blank on what I've read. But I'm going to go through the books that I've read in order that I read them, and yeah. The first book I read was Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I gave this book 4 stars. I listened to it and the narrator was really good. I'm currently waiting on the second book in the series to be available at my library. I really enjoyed listening to it. I can't remember what the narrator's called, but I put on Twitter that I was listening to it and someone commented that they could listen to anything that the narrator narrated, and I agree, she's got a really good voice. It is a young adult fiction based on a society where there was magic, but the magic has been taken away by royalty, and the main character is going on a quest to reinstate the magic. Each person who has magic has a magical ability that's different. So the main character in this one, she's a reaper, so she can bring the dead back to life and control what they do. Not like fully to life, but she can use the bodies to either fight for her or do something that she wants them to do. It's a fast-paced story, moving to lots of different locations. I liked the elements of magic and them trying to fight to get it back. I'm looking forward to the second one so that I can see how other magic is used. The second book that I read was American Street by Ibi Zobey. I think I'm saying that right, I'm not too sure. I gave this one 4.5 stars. Again, I listened to this book. I think it was only a very short book because I remember listening to it in maybe just over a working day. The book is about a teenager called Fabiola, I think, if I remember right. And she comes over from Haiti to America with her mum, but her mum is detained in New Jersey and she has to carry on to Detroit where her auntie and cousins live. And it's about her trying to find a way in America and as a black woman in American society and how black people are treated in America. The ending did come of it as a shock, but not surprising, which you'll know if you've read it. There's also a little bit of voodoo in it, which I really enjoyed. It was a quick read, and although not very much happens in it, I still really enjoyed it. I'd definitely read something by the same author again. The third book that I read, should be here, was George Orwell's Down and Out in Paris and London. If you watch my other videos, I cancelled my Orwellathon because I wasn't in a good place mentally, and to read stuff about poverty and struggle and fighting against the system constantly was just not something my brain could manage last month. So this was the only one that I read. It was depressing, like most of Orwell's books are depressing, and It just follows Orwell while he is in Paris, and then when he goes back to London and his struggle to find work, struggle to find money to feed himself, struggle to pay the rent. In London, he doesn't even have a home. He just goes to stay in basically what are homeless shelters. They're just horrible, like cells where men just go to sleep when they have nowhere to live for the night. And yeah, it's really, really miserable, and shows what life was like for men in the 1930s that were living in poverty, basically. I mean, it's good. I wouldn't say it's a historical piece of work because it's only from Orwell's point of view, so it's not a wide range, but he does meet some interesting characters, and it's a very light-hearted way to put the desperation that these men have in this story. They always seem to lift themselves up in one way or the other. Orwell has a way of making you feel how dirty the place is and how it smells, and how the bodies look, and yeah, he's very good at it. But you've got to be in the right frame of mind to read it. I gave it 4 stars. Give it a go, but don't try and read all of Orwell's books in a month where you're not feeling very well, because you'll just feel even worse. The 4th book that I read was another audiobook, and it's called The Henna Wars by Abida. I don't even want to pronounce her surname because I'll just get it completely wrong, so it'll be here so you can see it. It's about a teenage girl who goes to a Catholic school in Ireland. She is a Bangladeshi Muslim, and she's also a lesbian. At the beginning of the book, she tells her mum and dad that she's a lesbian, and then spends the rest of the story hoping that her mum and dad will come around to the idea. She gets bullied at school because she's different, and there's also a bit of cultural appropriation mentioned in this, which is, you know, the title of the story, The Henna Wars. It's a girl that comes from an old primary school, comes to her high school, and they have this competition at school to be like the best businesswoman, and they both decide to open a henna business, and the main character, whose name I can't remember, has an issue with the other girl having a henna business when she's neither Muslim nor from a culture that has ever used henna. The other girl only started this because she saw the main character's henna and liked it and thought she would just do it. I liked the story. I liked the ending because it wasn't a typical ending. It wasn't like, oh, you know, the main character wins and everything's lovely, because, you know, it didn't need to be. I like the way it explores homosexuality in a community that doesn't really accept it, or doesn't traditionally accept it, should I say. I gave it 4 stars. It's worth a read. Again, it was in quite a short audiobook. The only issue I had, if you saw the last video that I did, I think it was in my reading vlog, is the narrator was American, so she was neither Irish nor Bangladeshi, and it just didn't fit. The 5th book that I read, again, listened to, was To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. I gave it 3.5 stars, but now thinking about it, I'm probably going to knock it down to 3. It's a young adult fiction about a siren that kills princes, and about we follow another character who is a prince, and he's a siren killer. I wanted them to end the story with them trying to kill each other and one of them dying, but obviously that is not the case, and you can imagine what happens to these 2 characters who one's male and one's female. Now, I did read this book. I didn't listen to it. I thought I listened to it on an audiobook, but I read it. It was an easy read. It wasn't life-changing, but I enjoyed it. I'll read anything about mermaids. I don't think I would rush out to read a sequel if there was one, but then again, I read the selection and then read the rest of the series just because I wanted to know what happened, even though I didn't like the selection. The sixth book that I read on audiobook was The Diary of a Bookseller by Shaun Bythell. It's a non-fiction memoir about a man who owns the bookshop in Wigtown, Scotland, which is a book town, and just his stories about being a second-hand bookseller and the characters that he meets in the customers that come in the store, and a lot about how Amazon is killing the book industry. I do love a second-hand bookstore. It's something that I will always seek out in a new city, so I enjoyed reading about this bookstore and the sarcastic way that he describes the customers. It's worth a read if you are a reader and you like bookstores. I gave this one 4 stars, just for pure enjoyment. The next book I listened to was Armada by Ernest Cline. I actually thought I hadn't read this. I've had it on my bookshelf since just after it came out, and I thought I hadn't read it, but then as I started listening to it and put it in my Goodreads that I'd started it, I realised I had read it before. It's about a teenage boy who plays this online computer game, battling aliens in spaceships, and it turns out that it's not just a game, it was training because aliens are coming to invade the planet, and they have already before, and he has to go to war with the aliens. Ernest Cline did Ready Player One. It's nowhere near as good as Ready Player One, but I did still enjoy it. I suppose if you are a big gamer in that kind of game, then it must be really exciting to think about the idea that what you're playing is actually real and you could go off and do that in real life. But I think that's why I resonated with Ready Player One. It was the nostalgia of it, and this one didn't get me as much as that one did. I still gave it 4 stars. Will Wheaton narrates it, and he's perfect for these books. I'm glad they picked him again. I then read Conventionally Yours by Annabeth Albert, which was something I got from NetGalley. Years and years ago I used to have NetGalley when I had a blog, but I haven't used it for years and years. So once I started this YouTube channel, I signed up for it again, and this was the first one that I finished. It's a romance novel about 2 friends, well, frenemies, who go on a road trip to a convention for a card game, kind of like Magic the Gathering. It's a definite insta-love, and it just wasn't believable. They literally don't like each other, and then next minute they're in love and want to snog each other's faces off and have sex all the time. So yeah, it was alright. I preferred the story about the card game more than the romance. If it was more about the card game, I would have given it more than 3 stars. The next one that I read, an actual book, I went to see one of my friends last weekend for a kind of like a garden party. Basically just got pizza and had drinks, and I hadn't seen her since my birthday, and she gave me she gave me 2 of my birthday presents, and this one is one that she got me, which I was really pleased and excited about. I hadn't mentioned it, but I know she'd mentioned it in conversations before, and I said I hadn't read it, so she picked this one up for me, and this is the one I was talking about when I said I thought I'd only read 3, because I picked this one up either the Sunday or the Monday after the party and read it in one sitting. I haven't read a drama since. I read one in university, but I didn't finish it, and I did performing arts in college, so I read a lot of drama then. I was in college until I was 19, and that was a long time ago. If you don't know what The Crucible is, it is about the witch trials in Salem, and that's basically it, really. I can imagine if you would watch it on stage, I haven't seen it on stage, it would be quite intense, and I tried to read it in that tone. It was really good. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I finally read it. It's a shame it's so short, but obviously it's a drama, so it can't be pages and pages and pages. So yeah, thank you, Beth, for buying this for me. Oh, and I gave it 4 stars. The next one that I read on ebook through my library was A Bit of a Stretch by Chris Atkins. It's a memoir about a filmmaker who got sent to prison for, I think it was fraud, and he did 2.5 years in Wandsworth prison, and it's basically just his day-to-day story about how prison was, how the prisoners were treated, the things that they weren't able to access, like hospital care, mental health care, showers, clean clothes. And it's basically kind of like a comment on how prisons should be reformed, which we all know that they do. I love watching any prison documentaries. It's something me and my husband will always watch together. So I really enjoyed this book. I give it 4 stars, didn't give it 5 stars. Find it hard to give memoir 5 stars. I don't really want to judge someone's life in that way. It was funny, it was sad, I wouldn't say it was shocking, but maybe that's because I do watch a lot of prison documentaries and I know what they're like. I suppose if you don't know much about the prison system and how prisoners are treated, you might find it quite shocking. He also worked for what they call the listeners in prison, which is basically like a peer-to-peer, like a Samaritans type thing, but in prison. And he sees a lot of self-harm and extremely mentally ill people that don't get the help that they need. So it's an interesting story and something that everyone should be aware of how the prison systems are. The last one that I finished, again on audiobook, was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This is the final in the Folk of the Air series. There are 2 like companion books, one after the first book and one after the final book, but I haven't read them and I don't know if I will. I gave this one 3 stars. I gave all of them 3 stars. I enjoyed it for what it was, but I didn't think it was fantastic. It was... might be a bit spoilery here, but I never understood why Jude loved... oh my god, Carden. I couldn't understand it. He was horrible to her all the time. He was hot and cold. He would make her think he was going to be with her and then he wouldn't be. And she just seemed to go, oh, okay, I'm a bit mad, but, you know, I'll accept it. And it just... that relationship just isn't a very good relationship and shouldn't be a relationship. I wanted to finish it, again, like I said earlier on with To Kill a Kingdom. I read the selection, which was terrible, but I had to read it to finish it. And this was the same kind of situation. I have got down here that I'd give it 4 stars, but I didn't. I give it 3. So that's it. We're all done. That's what I read in June. Like I said, it was a lot more than I thought it was. And I enjoyed most things. Most of the books that I read were 4 stars. No 5 stars this month, but I'm very, very picky this year about what I give 5 stars. So something is going to have to completely blow me away for me to give it 5 stars. I hope you had a good reading month. Let me know if you read any of these books. And I'll see you in a couple of days with my July TBR. Take care. Bye.